Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're opening up a set of sources that, well, they really zoom in on one of the most fundamental contradictions in modern politics. And that's the dizzying gap between the dazzling promises made during an election and the inconvenient, often kind of boring requirements of actual progress.
The foundational stuff.
Exactly. So we're using a specific context, a recent election cycle in the state of Bihar, as our lens. But honestly, the conflict here is universal.
It really is.
Our source material argues that during an election, promises don't just fly. They fly so fast that they leave truth and reality, miles behind. Our mission today is to unpack that contrast.
The difference between the announced dreams and the gritty day-to-day work of real development.
That's it.
And what's fascinating here, even though we're anchored in one specific regional election, is that the core tension is something every nation, every state really wrestles with.
So do you prioritize the spectacular?
Right, the big announcement that grabs everyone's attention immediately. Or do you focus relentlessly on the fundamental building blocks that actually create sustainable growth?
And the sources, they seem to argue that chasing the spectacular is a deeply ingrained and often pretty devastating pattern.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The sources, they immediately hit us with the scale of it all, calling these promises big, shiny, unbelievable dreams.
And they really are. We're not talking about small policy shifts here.
No, these are massive pledges. They're designed to capture not just your attention, but your imagination.
To give you a sense of the scale, we're talking about things like guaranteeing 1 crore government jobs.
That's 10 million jobs just announced.
Oh, yeah, overnight. And then there's 1 crore lakpati didis, which is a promise to make 1 crore women significantly prosperous through these government-backed self-help schemes.
And it's important to understand, as the sources point out, these aren't just abstract numbers, right?
Oh, not at all. They speak directly to the massive need for jobs and economic upliftment in a place like Bihar. And alongside these, you've got pledges for free electricity, money for farmers.
And the big symbolic stuff. New factories, huge expressways, skill hubs.
All of it.
I mean, all of it sounds incredibly aspirational, doesn't it? The sources describe the atmosphere not just as a campaign, but as a festival.
Yeah, full of songs, loud slogans, big speeches. It's all designed to generate this feeling of euphoria.
But then, this is where the material does something really jarring. After laying out all these spectacular announcements, the critique just pulls the rug out entirely.
It does.
The writer just states very plainly, we are not here to talk about dreams. We are here to talk about truth.
And that line right there, it just establishes the whole argument. It's the sheer scale of the political expectation being generated versus the painful ground reality.
So the argument is that the rhetoric is so overwhelming, so focused on this incredible future, that it actually becomes a tool for distraction. So we shift really abruptly from that promised future to what the source calls the truth that hurts the most. And the argument is that in all that noise, the entire purpose of the election, asking the real structural questions, it just got forgotten.
Completely forgotten.
And it makes you wonder what those questions even were. The source lists them out, these critical, practical questions that needed asking but weren't.
Like, where are the actual existing jobs, not the promised ones?
Right. And where are the good schools? Where are the functioning hospitals? And my favorite detail, the one that's so powerful.
Where are the roads that survive one full monsoon?
Yes. That one detail says so much because it takes this abstract idea of infrastructure and makes it so tangible.
It really does. And the source points out this crucial separation that gets blurred in the heat of a campaign. Hope is not development.
And trust is not employment.
Exactly. A state doesn't suddenly become strong just because a politician announces a big number. It only gets strong when the actual, the physical and human infrastructure is robust enough to support that growth.
So hope is necessary, but it's a precursor to policy. It's not a substitute for it.
That's the core idea.
It sounds like the source is framing this as, purely cynical, like politicians are intentionally distracting us with impossible dreams.
Oh, yeah.
Does the material suggest these promises might come from maybe a genuine but misplaced ambition?
That's a great question. The sources seem less concerned with the politician's intent and more with the outcome for the citizen.
Okay.
The argument is that the effect of focusing on these massive long-shot promises is the systematic neglect of immediate foundational needs. It's a failure of the attention economy.
An attention economy failure. I like that.
And to really illustrate this, the sources use these powerfully relatable examples. Think about the everyday realities.
Right.
A child trying to study under a broken school roof, constantly worried about the next rainstorm.
Or a patient who has to travel for hours just to find a hospital bed.
Exactly. Losing precious time. Or a university graduate with multiple degrees, fully qualified but just stuck, waiting for a job letter that never comes.
Or the farmer whose harvest depends more on sheer luck with the weather than on reliable irrigation or actual government support.
Those are what the text calls the everyday realities, and they get systematically ignored.
Because if you're dazzled by the announcement of a huge expressway or 1 million jobs, you don't look down at the pothole that just blew out your tire.
You don't. You don't look at the leaky roof over your child's classroom. It requires real mental discipline to prioritize that broken roof over the spectacular dream.
So the source identifies this as a devastating pattern then,
Yeah.
one that repeats, election after election.
Yes. The fundamental real issues just vanish from the conversation. The critique is that society's true foundations, education, jobs, healthcare infrastructure, they're treated like temporary gifts,
Handed out by politicians.
when they should be universally guaranteed basic rights.
Okay, so let's dive deeper into that structural failure. If real growth doesn't come from freebies or these dazzling promises, it must come from strengthening those weak foundations. What are the necessary ingredients for that, according to this analysis?
Well, the ingredients are simple to say, but immensely difficult to execute. It's
Yeah.
planning, policies, and accountability.
And notice how different those are from election slogans.
Completely different. Planning takes years. Policy is nuanced. And accountability requires consistent, often painful transparency. They're neglected because they're hard and, frankly, unglamorous.
You can't put sustained institutional effort on a campaign poster.
Exactly. You can't launch an expressway in 2 months, but you can promise 5 of them in a 5-minute speech. Real growth takes decades, and it takes the courage to admit when policies fail.
So it's much easier to just announce a cash transfer, a freebie that gives that immediate gratification.
Right. Rather than reform the educational system to ensure quality jobs exist 5 years from now.
That makes perfect sense. The immediate electoral incentive just pushes politicians toward the spectacular and away from the structural.
And the source uses a very strong analogy here. When the foundation becomes weak, nothing stands. Not the state, not the nation.
Which raises the question of consequence. If these foundations are chronically ignored, if schools and roads and hospitals remain inadequate, the result is, well, inevitable. It's migration.
It is. The youth feel, in the source's words, forced to leave their homes just to survive. They have to abandon their community to find basic sustenance somewhere else.
And that migration becomes the clearest symptom of the structural weakness.
And that symptom, it just reinforces the pattern. When your most ambitious and skilled people leave, the local demand for better schools, for better jobs, it weakens.
Making it even easier for the political cycle to keep neglecting those basics in favor of more grand, empty promises.
It's a vicious cycle, and it prioritizes electoral success over human capital.
This brings us to the source's ultimate call to action then, which demands a pretty radical shift in perspective from citizens.
Yeah, the critique says that elections are not a sale, and development is definitely not a discount offer.
The time has come, the argument goes, to stop passively accepting what's given and to start asking the right questions.
The questions that focus on construction, not consumption.
Exactly. So instead of the citizen asking, what temporary relief will you give us?
The sources tell us to demand something far more enduring. We should be asking, what will you build for us that lasts?
How will you secure our children's future with permanent institutions?
And, maybe most importantly, how will you make our state truly strong and self-sufficient?
So what does this all mean then? We've seen the sheer scale of the promises, the millions of jobs, the infrastructure fantasy, and the the equally vast scale of the foundational neglect.
The broken school roofs and monsoon-destroyed roads.
Right. So the key takeaway from this deep dive seems to be that real growth requires demanding planning, policy, and accountability over glossy manifestos and, dazzling speeches.
This specific critique is really an appeal for critical thinking, especially when you're dealing with this overwhelming information overload. It's about focusing your attention on long-term systemic strength, not short-term electoral gratification.
And the sources, they end with a challenge for you, the listener.
They do. Are we ready to demand the unglamorous, difficult basics that truly matter? Or will we get lost in the next round of spectacular promises once again?
And a final thought to leave you with. What single foundational issue is schools? Is it roads, hospitals, local employment? What one issue in your community would you prioritize over the next spectacular political promise?
Think about where your focus really needs to be, and then ask that question out loud.